Hi, I'm Sarah Gabriel, former special education teacher turned social entrepreneur and founder of In Good Company. We help businesses build thriving teams by giving them the confidence and tools to effectively lead employees with disabilities. This podcast is for leaders creating interability workplaces. Together, we'll dig into what it takes to lead with both heart and business savvy and build workplaces where contributors of all abilities are not just included, but essential. Welcome to In Good Company. Hello, everyone. I am so excited to introduce today's guest, Valerie Herskowitz. She is the founder and CEO of the Chocolate Spectrum in Jupiter, Florida, and proud mom of Blake. Valerie started with one young man and a vision, and since then, her program has provided apprenticeship opportunities to nearly 100 adults with developmental disabilities, giving them a place to learn, grow, and thrive. And just so you know, the Chocolate Spectrum is more than a chocolate shop. It's a mission-driven business where 100% of sales and support goes to this incredible program, and you can shop either wholesale or visit them in store if you're in the area or online, and they do ship year round to anywhere in the US. Did I get all of that right, Valerie?
Absolutely. You're good.
One thing I didn't say in here was how long the Chocolate Spectrum has been around. So I think I'll just let you answer that question by kicking us off with the story of how the Chocolate Spectrum came to be and when.
So this was not one of my plans. You know, I have people that come in the shop all the time and they say, so Val, what is your plan in 5 years? Well, this certainly wasn't one that I had listed as a bucket list or something I had to do. What happened was really my son, who is now 34, yes, I have to do the calculations when they get that old. And he was about to graduate high school. This was back in 2013. I had owned a therapy center. I'm a speech therapist, and I had run and operated a therapy center until 2008. I was kind of having a good time. I was consulting. I was teaching at the university. I was working with my state organization, state speech organization. And I decided to start taking some classes in 2010, pastry and chocolate, and just did it for fun. And for some reason, my son Blake, who is what you would consider to be severe, would come into the kitchen when I was practicing and kind of want to be there and do a few things too. And then when he graduated, we didn't have any other opportunity for him. Zero. I had spent 2 years really combing through whatever I thought could possibly be something that he would be able to do. And there was nothing. I mean, literally nothing. I offered to help start programs in the community just as a volunteer, work with the agencies. But again, he's a severe kid. He requires a great deal of support, and there really wasn't any funding for those kinds of programs. So I was at a loss. So we decided I just wanted to keep him busy. Okay, that was it. So we started working in the kitchen, and I was doing my work at the university, and I was doing my work in some consulting work, but mostly I had the ability to work with him. And everybody got cakes and cupcakes and chocolate and everything for every birthday and anniversary that we could imagine. And when people started coming up to me and said, well, you want to sell it? I said, okay. So we did it kind of informally. And then the day actually came in May of 2013 where he graduated, and we decided to take it up a notch. We decided to maybe start advertising a bit and going to shows local, like not farmers markets, but similar kinds of things, and bringing our stuff with us and seeing if anybody would want to buy it. Sure enough, we were making some sales. And so my older son, who's very involved in the autism community, he's a behavior analyst, said, he's great with the names. Like he can come up with names, and he's a pun guy. He's really good with words. Said, well, let's call it the Chocolate Spectrum. And I said, that's awesome, because chocolate's on a spectrum too, dark milk, white. And of course, we're all on the spectrum. We did it out of my house, and people would find out I was selling this stuff. So I be at the beauty shop and I was selling, and I had a mother come up to me and say, well, I have a son with Down syndrome. Can he come? And I'd say, of course. And then another one would say, I have a son with intellectual deficits. Okay. Pretty soon we had 14 people coming. Eventually some of them got paid. yeah, eventually we were able to pay a couple of them. They're still with me. We basically grew out of the home kitchen in about 2015. There's a cottage food law, which is the ability to produce items for sale in your home, but it can only go to a certain level. Plus, it's a noisy business with machinery, and my husband was like, "No, this has got to go." So we did open up our shop in Jupiter, Florida, and I call it the Cafe and Academy, and we started in 2016. And that's when we really started to formalize our program. We had classes and people would come, and we had a few more that we hired to. But eventually, by about 2017, we decided to include the teens that were starting to transition out of high school, and eventually a little younger, because I felt, well, it's great to get the adults, but what about the teens that are needing some jobs? Because our program is not really just about making chocolate, it's about learning how to work. So we call it an internship or an apprenticeship now. So I switched to that model. An apprenticeship is a little different. It's not a class oriented type thing. It's an internship. You work alongside the staff doing whatever it is that has to get done. There's a lot of requirements. They have to learn a lot of things about coming to work. And that started around, like I said, 2017. We just kept building it up until we got it to where it is today. And now we're thinking we have plans to expand it to a different venue, but of course we'll still have this one. We're a retail shop as well, because I was very insistent that we have retail. It's a training ground, really. And we love it. I mean, it's really great to have retail. Our community has embraced us, so it's been wonderful.
I love it when there's the opportunity to have a customer facing experience for the employees and for the guests. I remember the first time we met, Valerie, you talked about how this is also an awareness initiative. The guests that come in and shop with you have the opportunity to interact with a differently abled team than other retail stores.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that's what I call my second mission. And it's not any less important than our first mission, which is to give job skills, to work on job skills with individuals with developmental disabilities. But our second mission, which is just as important as the first mission, is to not just get these individuals included in the community, but to get the community included in us.
Yes.
So we do a lot of things to try to bring awareness to the community. We have a teen volunteer program now where the teens who need community service at the local high school come and they work with us.
That's great. That's a great idea.
And, that's exceeded my expectations. I mean, I didn't understand how needed that was until I got them.
So what part, if you have any specific examples or stories, I'd love to hear what took it over the top for this experience with the high schoolers in particular coming to volunteer with your apprentices.
I was sort of flabbergasted at how many of the teens came to us and did not really have any of the understanding of what it was like to be with people with autism or other developmental disabilities. And I was surprised because high schools are integrated. I mean, the classes are integrated. And so I didn't really understand that. And they really were almost shy around them, like a little afraid that they weren't going to do something right. Not afraid like they were going to get hurt or anything like that, but afraid more of, cautious because they didn't know what to do or how to speak to them. They didn't understand that, you have people that are non-speaking in there, and you have people that maybe don't have the most appropriate social skills, which we work on. And so it turned into that experience almost having its own set of goals. And then also too, we go out into the community at large, and we, even in our shopping center, we do something called walk around. So we're in a regular busy shopping center. It's a retail opportunity for them. And it's also, again, meets our second mission. And again, when we first moved in there, I mean, they just didn't know who we were and what to expect. And some of them have become like, they do special fundraisers for us. And, it's become a whole pride that some of them have developed. The beauty shop that I go to is in that shopping center. And my hairdresser, I'll come in for my every 6-week appointment, and she'll say, the guys were here today. So they were here today and we bought some cake. I have to shout out to my community. Jupiter has really embraced us.
Valerie, I could just pull out and call out, I guess, to our audience several themes that I'm picking up on in your story. First, to go all the way back to the beginning, just how organically it started. You started by just seeing your son. You shared an interest in the kitchen and you saw adulthood approaching and you were starting to think about that. So the solution that ended up addressing your son's experience ended up addressing your friend at the hair salon's son's experience or a daughter's experience. And then it just naturally grew. I love just how I know it wasn't easy. I know you're sharing the highlights with us right now. And
Sure.
I'll ask you about the challenges in a minute.
Oh, okay.
Because those are learning opportunities for us all as well. And eventually I think they become reasons to celebrate when you're on the other side of them. But I so respect and am encouraged by people who start solving problems right where they are and doing it well and doing it with integrity and care and thoughtfulness and inviting others in. I think that providing the opportunity to just have that proximity to people who think and learn differently is so important for all of us. And so for you to have that and embrace it is great. Another theme that I was picking up on, the desire to raise awareness, and there's an educational piece to that. If you're in this line of work, you're always teaching in some form or fashion. Then cultivating new experiences for people to have the opportunity to brush shoulders with people of different abilities in them. And I think that goes a long way because you never know, one of those high schoolers might grow up to be the next founder of something similar to the chocolate spectrum.
Right. And we need those kinds of people in the next generation moving up. We need to, there's the growth in my community of programs for adults we're still very needy, but the growth in the last 8 years has been substantial to where people are realizing that there is this tremendous niche and need of programming for those that have graduated high school. It's really important for people to understand that young people have to see opportunity when they're making decisions about what avenues that they want to take when they get into upper education. And so one of the things that I'm trying to explain is that there's lots of opportunity in that arena. These are individuals that are expressing interest in this special needs. There's lots of opportunity. And maybe we need to think outside the box when you're being educated. Maybe it's not just about, I'll get a special education degree and then maybe it's a business degree.
Yeah.
Where in special ed? You don't know. So we have to think outside the box.
Yes. Valerie, I love that you just called out education on one side and then business on the other. I don't know if you remember when we first met, my first master's degree is in special education. And then I packed up my classroom and came to business school to earn my MBA because I had this hunch, and I think it's true, to continue working on this challenge that someone called the cliff, the challenges that the disability community faces after school and beyond. It's going to take all kinds of contributors. We need the specialists trained in, speech and language and special education generally, but then we also need business leaders. We have a computer scientist on our team now, making sure that we have the technology to support the work that we're hoping to add value to. And how beautiful is that? We talk about a spectrum of abilities. It's in your DNA as a company. Disability, not disability, teacher, business, scientist, chef in the kitchen. We need all these trades coming together, and there's a place for all of those contributors. And I think your story is beautiful because you have the technical training with speech, and then you got the kind of specialty training in your new trade with the chocolate spectrum, which is the baking and the food. And then you are a business.
Yes.
And you have lights to keep on and you have people to pay. So how has that been over the last 8 years as you've developed and grown and I'm sure changed and you have hopes to keep growing? How's the business side of it?
Well, when I got into it, like I said, I really never had any ideas of or goals of opening up a shop. I thought it was just something to keep my son occupied. I was still doing stuff on the other side of it in my profession in speech. But I thought, and I mistakenly thought, I had run and operated a very successful speech and occupational therapy center for many years that I could do this. But I wasn't that, I guess I was still humble enough to realize that I needed help. So I reached out to a lot of different companies that offer that kind of assistance, and I still to this day do. Everybody that's willing to help. So I went to SCORE. I don't know if you're familiar with that organization. It's a bunch of volunteers of mostly retired business people that do mentor, and I worked with them so carefully. And then I was also involved with a mentor organization called Rising Tide Car Wash. Amazing thing that they do down one county down from me. And one of the CEOs of that company is also a business.
That's right.
He's a wonderful business, Tom Deary.
Have you read his new book?
I haven't. He sent it to me. Potential, the potential.
The Power of Potential.
Yeah, I haven't.
It's a good one.
So they had some courses they were teaching at that point. That became a great deal for me. And for many years, they answered emails. But the truth is, we don't make any money. We should make money because we have a lot of sales. We are very, very busy. But what happened is that the expenses of running this type of a business, it's a food business. There's a lot of expenses involved. And if we had had this much sales when we first started, we would have been doing great. But between insurance and rent and overhead and salaries, because now I have quite a few of my employees are full-time, they're being paid well, So with benefits and things like that. I still to this day don't take any compensation, which is okay for now. I don't know how long that's going to be okay for, but that's okay for now. That's one I have to get real now in one way. Not that I ever wasn't real, but that's one of the reasons we're looking to possibly expand our online sales, our online orders. Not that we don't have a lot, we do, but make that a whole separate division and put that into a non-retail environment. Really try and beef up that part of our business, so that could maybe start to generate more revenue to protect it. And we just have to learn the marketing. It's a matter of time too, because I don't find that I have a lot of time, and also my age. I'm getting up there, and I have to be realistic about what I can do, which I'm not. I always think I can do more than I can, and I always endeavor to. But we'll see how that goes. But that's really the biggest challenge we have, is just keeping it afloat and making sure that we have been able to do it. We got through the pandemic. I took advantage of every government handout. I'm not embarrassed to say, if there was a handout to get, I got it, figured it out, did all the paperwork myself.
And you're a 501c.
So we are not.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Question. The Chocolate Spectrum is a for-profit, and the reason we are is because in 1999, we started a nonprofit called National Autism Registry. I'll talk about that one second. But that organization was started with the mission of providing opportunities, whatever they were, to individuals with autism and other special needs, and community-based ones. So through the years, we did all kinds of things. We did recreational programs, we did social-based programs, we did camp programs, we did all kinds of things. And when it got to, I sort of followed the trajectory that my son was on. When it got to adulthood, we naturally went into adult services. And that's the fundraising arm of our business. So that's the organization that does all of the applies for grants, solicits donations and stuff like that. Unfortunately, well, I don't know if this is really going to be a problem or not, but a couple of weeks ago, when our Secretary of Health and Human Services, Robert F. Kennedy, decided to start a registry, which he decided against afterwards. He called it the National Autism Registry. So at the time when people were Googling what's the National Autism Registry, is coming up with my website. I was getting calls from reporters if I wanted to make a statement. It was kind of funny, but I'm kind of glad they decided not to do it, because I was like thinking, what do I legally have to do
Name.
now?
Oh my
But
goodness.
it's really funny. So anyway, I think he decided they're not doing that registry thing. So, but anyway, so no, so that's the long answer. So no, so people can make donations. They make it to that organization. And my accountant said, that's a well-known, back in the day when we first started, he said, National Autism Registry, it's a well-known entity in the grant world. You're not making any money in the chocolate spectrum, so you don't have to worry about that end of it. So you should just keep that as a for-profit.
Okay. And I know that's something that a lot of people grapple with when they're starting interability hiring business models. Are we for profit? Are we a nonprofit? Do we have a nonprofit arm? And there are different ways to go about that. So do you feel like this is a model you would recommend to someone just getting started?
No, this was because we already had a nonprofit. If you are doing this type of work, normally you would want to get grants.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're not a 501c3, you can't solicit for contributions and grants. I mean, I have to do the paperwork every year for the state to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So no, I would definitely do a 501c3.
Okay. We'll put that on the record. They're just getting started.
If you're not going to get grants, you're not going to get grants and you don't think your for-profit is going to make any money, well then, okay, you can keep it that way. But normally if you're starting this endeavor, you want money to come. Right now, most of the grants that I apply for with the help of my grant writer is they'll have a line on there. They want to know who in the community, what other nonprofits are you partnering with?
Interesting. So partnerships are good.
So well, they're not saying necessarily formally, but just which organizations in the community do you work with to improve their situation and they improve yours? And I have a slew of them. That's one thing that is really important for us, is to keep up our partnerships with, for instance, the L Center for Excellence, which is an unbelievably amazing organization down the street from us in Jupiter, and schools, and as I mentioned Rising Tide at one point. So all of those things are extremely important right now for writing grants.
Did you know there are nearly 200 small businesses in the U.S. who are on a mission to employ individuals with disabilities, and we want to send shoppers their way? That's where you come in. Join the In Good Company passport game and support businesses that are moving the needle for disability employment. Here's how you play. Choose 3 businesses featured on our passport, snap photos with each visit or online purchase, and share them on your Instagram. Tag IGC with us and the business you supported, and we'll send you a prize. Grab your passport and instructions in the show notes or on our Instagram page today. There are people listening who are probably closer to the beginning of where you were in your story. Maybe their child is nearing graduation. Maybe they've already passed graduation and they haven't found that next opportunity. And I hear so many stories of parents and advocates and even teachers saying, let's go create the solution then. Let's go build a place of employment for this group of incredible job seekers who might benefit from a different environment, or frankly, they do great in our current work environments, but the managers just aren't quite there yet in understanding how to bring them onto their team. What would you say to those parents, those advocates, the ones just starting to wonder, could I create a place of employment?
Okay, so I get that question a lot.
Yeah, it's a big one.
And I have parents calling me all the time. I had another business before this, which, like I said, had its helped, but it also didn't give me the kind of skills I needed necessarily for this business. But what I'm saying is I had a certain naivete that, and John's not going to mind I say this. So John from Rising Tide Car Wash, and I told him, he said, well, just don't expect every person with autism to support your business just because it's an autism focused business. You better market to the general population. And I was like, what? I thought everybody with autism would just start buying my chocolate. So I had a lot of naivete going on there. The biggest misunderstanding is you have to have funding. You cannot start this business from zero and expect that there's going to be some grant that's going to come and fund it. Yes, there are grants out there. And if you can find it and you have certain connections, they're more likely to fund you after you've already started and you've shown your success.
Sure. You need that validation.
So that's the number one problem that I find is people are not funded. And so I always say, if you have a business, pilot it for a couple years. If you can keep your overhead extremely low. And what I mean by that is if you can start it in your house for a couple of years to see if there's a market and also to see if your child with special needs is enjoying himself or herself. And if there's, because some of them have started businesses and then their kids like, I don't want to do this. There's just a lot of reasons for piloting. We're doing a pilot program, hopefully this summer in the fall, where we're going to start a couple of apprentices, daily, rather than just a few times a week. They're going to come in almost full time. Pilot programs are great to see if it works and if there's a need, and then that's a good way of going to get funding.
Absolutely.
Reach out to people in that industry. And that's another thing Rising Tide Car Wash told me. And I did this. I spent the money and I hired chocolate consultants. They came down from New York.
That sounds like a wonderful job, by the way, to be a chocolate consultant.
And he literally came down from New York and he really gave me, I wouldn't say he did everything, but he gave me a lot of, now that I paid for, that wasn't any freebie. I was trained, I was certified in chocolate. So I felt pretty good to, at least, of course, I look back at the work I did then, and now, of course, it's very different all these years later. Getting a consultant in the field you're going into was one of the Rising Tide mantras, and I did do that. We had the other thing they taught me, which was very valuable. You have to have several revenue streams. You can't rely on putting all your eggs in one basket. So that's a retail host, like retail, wholesale, the training programs, we have parties, birthday parties, events, and you're trying to constantly find revenue streams like I was talking to you about earlier. So I think those are very important things. But number one, and time.
Say more about time. What do you mean by that?
A lot of people who have gotten in touch with me, I'll say, well, are you free?
You mean availability?
Time, right. Availability to do this. No, I'm going to hire managers and this and that and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, well, you need some availability to be able to do it. I was older, that was not necessarily a benefit, but I had been able to retire at that point from a financial need. And now we'll see what happens with the Medicaid cuts. My son does get Medicaid, but right now I can keep that up. A lot of people are younger than me and they have the energy, which is a good plus, but they also have to work and earn money. My husband still works. So there has to be that end of it, I guess. And I hate saying these things. It sounds very cruel, but money is.
It's realistic. I think it's realistic.
And there's some people that have called me or whatever, and they have fantastic ideas. I mean, where to get funding. And that's great. Some of them have had businesses before.
Sure.
Or they've had other things that have come into their lives where they've been able to go into a partnership with another organization to get their business started. I haven't really worked with any of them that have gotten like Shark Tank investors or anything, but
they've got to be out there somewhere.
But I've learned a lot from them. But yeah, you got to start with something.
I don't think that any of that sounded negative. I think it's honest. And I don't think a single person in the world who's a dreamer and has an idea or has a problem that they're so passionate about solving, if they're really being honest with themselves, I don't think any of them want it to stop as an idea. They want it to see the light of day. They want to see it survive and grow. And that takes money. It takes time and attention and a lot of nurturing.
I mean, we're here now 12 years and we still need to up our game again because of the rising costs. And I have to credit Rising Tide, John Deary with that, because he did say to me one time, so how are you going to monetize it? And it was such a weird question because I didn't really even know. I was saying, I remember when you told me, I wasn't even sure what that word meant at the time. But yeah, it's turned out to be really good advice.
When I left the classroom to come to business school and study entrepreneurship and, In Good Company as a startup, and a lot of what you're saying resonates with what we've experienced as well. It would always shake me a little bit when I would meet someone when they'd want to know about the startup and say, how are you doing on revenue? What's your model? Are you making money? How do you make money? And I would just think, do you even care why I'm doing this? And I get it now. It's because you have to stay alive to see the mission.
I got the same thing from SCORE.
Somebody has to love you enough and care about your mission enough to ask you those questions, or your mission's not going to survive.
And I used to say, oh, it's not about the money. It is.
It has to be. And we do want to do it well, and we want to pay our staff well.
Well, that's key. It's about them. One thing I will tell you, speaking about the climate of today, I had to do this during the pandemic, and I'm doing it now, which is supply chain. We buy out of the country. If you look behind me, there's boxes and boxes and boxes of chocolate here because I got scared. And I bought a pallet, and I didn't have any place in the shop to put it. So we're just storing a lot of it here right in my office. People don't realize that. They think that this is like this loving, humanistic type of program. They forget there's those hardcore things that a business owner and staff, I keep my manager abreast of all this. She knows what goes in, what comes out. You have to keep track of. That's the not so humanistic part of this. This is the backbone is the finance.
Or maybe it's part of the humanistic part. If you think about keeping a child alive, there's love and there's nurture first and foremost, but they also need food and water and air. And so maybe this is the food, water, and air. There's the business side where if we want employment for this group of adults, we need jobs. And we need businesses to hire them, and businesses.
You're absolutely right.
And I'm squirming in my seat as we talk because I don't like talking about money at all.
So the one population that seems to attract people to want to do things like I'm doing is the therapy oriented or the teacher oriented group of individuals who love working with the population they're working with, but are not so keen about it being in a traditional environment and want to kind of look outside the box. And that's typically not the population that's had to really think about financial type of things. Now, like I said, I had a therapy center before, but that was more traditional business. And so this, don't forget too, I started a business that it was like a new concept. So that was harder too. And I tell people, maybe you don't want to do that. Maybe you want to go with an established a business that has an established protocol, so to speak, that you can emulate rather than try and reinvent the wheel.
And there are franchise models out there, and that'll be part of our exploration as well over the course of this series. But Valerie,
I tell people to stay out of the food business because it's really hard business. That I know.
Yeah. My dad was a restaurant owner growing up, so I grew up
really
in
hard business.
And I've never seen a harder working set of parents than mine, and exhausted. It's tiring and it's a labor of love. But I would be remiss if we didn't end this podcast with something encouraging. We brought it down with the realism, which is absolutely necessary, and it is out of love and care and a genuine desire for anyone out there asking, could this be me? Could I start something? Valerie, I don't hear you saying no. I hear you saying, be aware and make sure you've got all these ducks in a row so that
the opposite
off and it works.
No. I'm an optimist person.
Yeah,
I'm an optimistic person.
I'd love for you to share, whether it's Blake, your son, or the story of another apprentice. You've got almost 100 to pick from, so it might be hard. But if you could share a story with us, it's always easy to get lost in the numbers and the model and the stress. Is the grant going to come in? Are we going to run out of supplies? All those logistical things that somebody has to keep their eye on to keep it going. So I always like to go back to stories of the people that this is impacting. Do you have any apprentices or participants in the chocolate spectrum who you've just seen blossom because of this opportunity?
A ton.
I know it's so hard. I'm so sorry.
But I think that, so I make it very clear that we're not in to train 100 budding chocolatiers or pastry chefs, but we do have some that are in culinary in high school and they come to us, and that's been a great experience. But we have the ones that come to us afterwards and tell us, or the parents do, my son learned this, this, and this, or my daughter learned this, this, and this, and she's applying it, especially like the customer service stuff into setting. But more than that, the thing that is sort of the benefit that I've seen that's been more than not anything I necessarily was putting down on paper as one of my goals, but more of the overwhelming big success stories has been in the socialization that this opportunity brings to anybody that walks in that door. Most of them are isolated. They have no idea on how to. One of our core goals is collaboration and communication. They don't have any understanding of how to collaborate and communicate. And we do it through on-the-job training, but it has gone outside of the job arena to where they, especially my staff, now have friends that they never had before, getting together with people on the outside, having a life that's well-rounded now with employment, social, has changed some of the individuals to the point where they've gone from a depression or depressive issues to feeling like they're successful in life, like they have friends, they have the full life. So, but that I can honestly say, and I don't want to use it one and two or three in particular people because it's, a little bit about keeping their privacy, right? But we do have some that have gone from depression to unbelievable happiness and the feeling of being fulfilled. That's really, I think, for me, that's been the most gratifying part.
Valerie, I don't even know what to say to that other than that work is needed. That environment is needed. And you just look at the numbers of mental health and people that are lonely and lacking interaction. I know it's extremely high in the disability community, especially once they leave school and they don't have kind of that built-in socialization. But to have a place like that where everyone is lifted up and they're lifting each other up, and
that's for sure.
It's
we have all levels, so that's so like I know we don't use those terms anymore, but people that have a little bit more support needs, how to get their support from the individuals, not just the volunteers, but the individuals who they themselves are neuro different. Yeah, ND, not just the NT, not just the neurotypical kids, but the ND too. So it's like we're all kind of working together. So it's not really definitive lines here. So
right. We need each other. It's not we're here to help them or they're here to help us. We help each other.
We call our staff mentor instructors. They do managing and a lot of stuff after a while.
Valerie, thank you so much for sharing your insight, your story, your pitfalls to avoid so that these missions can thrive. Please, everybody, go support the Chocolate Spectrum. You can donate, you can order. If you're a place of business, you can buy wholesale from them and sell a lot of their chocolate.
And I think I gave you a discount code.
That's right. IGC10. Go shop with the Chocolate Spectrum and use that discount code. We'll put all this information in the show notes as well. Valerie, you're a trailblazer.
Thank you.
And we appreciate your time with us today. So thank you.
Thank you. Take care, everybody.
Thanks for joining us on In Good Company. I hope this conversation gave you what you needed to take your next step. Special thanks to Georgia Tech's Institute for Leadership and Social Impact for the recording space and the coffee. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe, share, or leave a review to help more leaders like you find us. Want more tools, frameworks, or a community of like-minded advocates? Head over to igcwithus.com to learn more. We'd love to connect. Until next time, keep building what wasn't there before. You're in good company.